When I was a young child, both my school and my church celebrated harvest festivals each autumn. This was a special school assembly or church service when we'd give thanks for the bounty of the land, for the food that had been grown and gathered in recent months, and for the people who worked to provide it. There were also songs we'd sing, some of which were more specifically religious than others in order to justify it, at least in church, as a holy day. Now, we lived by the Thames estuary, not far outside London, and while it was certainly possible to find a farm or two in the countryside beyond the suburbs, I don't think that any of us who were at those school and church events were farmers. So there was some representative produce for what might have recently been harvested, but most of what was brought in and displayed was store-bought, because that's what we had at home. All of the food that was collected was then donated to people in need, those who didn't have enough to eat. It was a reminder as the days became shorter and the nights grew colder, not that this weekend has been a good example of that. It was a reminder of our task in both society and religion to make sure that everyone has enough. Celebrations of the harvest have been held all over the world for centuries, of course, though it turns out that the harvest festivals I experienced as a child had much more recent origins. Much as Christmas was created as a family holiday to curb the drunken chaos that had previously reigned at that time of year, the Anglican Harvest Festival was developed and promoted in the mid-19th century to tame what a number of vicars agreed were disgraceful scenes at the end of the harvest. Here in the United States, Thanksgiving serves some of the same functions as a harvest celebration, though it's now much broader than that, not to mention being bogged down in the legacy of settler colonialism. Any such social or religious occasion faces the same challenge that my childhood school and church faced, though, where most of us don't grow food ourselves, much less live on a farm. So in many places, the modern harvest festival is less about a successful growing season and more about recognizing that in spite of the apparent abundance of supermarkets, many people do not have access to food of sufficient quality and quantity. This morning then, given that most of us buy our food rather than grow it ourselves, and since what we want to eat is pretty much available all year long, not only when it's in season locally, let's ask how we might celebrate the harvest individually and as a community. Now though, there are a couple of ways that we can think about having enough. Now, this is not the same as whether we actually have enough or not. Rather, this is about our attitude toward the idea of, let's call it, enoughness. One way is to think that not only do we not have enough, but we'll never have enough. There's just not enough to go around. So we're all in competition, and we need to take what we can get for ourselves, but still we focus on what we don't have. We must control what we have, or else we'll get even further behind, but we can never work hard enough to get ahead because there just isn't enough. This is the mindset of scarcity. It's not so much about whether there actually is scarcity or not. Rather, it's an expectation of scarcity, that there will never be enough. Another way is to think that there will be enough for us. There is enough to go around, especially if we cooperate with one another, helping others to get what they need, and we focus in gratitude on what we have. We can share what we have, and things get better for everyone when we do, so success is measured by how well we work together, because there is enough for us all. This is the mindset of abundance. It's not so much about whether there actually is abundance or not. Rather, it's an expectation of abundance, that there will be enough. The thing about these mindsets is that they are not expressions of fact. They are expectations of the future that change our present behavior, so they become self-fulfilling prophecies. A mindset of scarcity helps to create actual scarcity, whereas a mindset of abundance helps to create actual abundance. Modern psychology has a lot to say how that actually works, but people have known it for a long time. For example, almost 2,000 years ago, in what is known as his second letter to the Corinthians, when the Apostle Paul asked his churches to be generous with one another, he noted that whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. I'm talking about these mindsets because a harvest festival is an expression of the mindset of abundance. Even if the harvest isn't that good, it's celebrated for what it is. And in gratitude, what has been harvested is shared, knowing that it is in generosity that true abundance may be found. After all, what is more likely to provide the motivation to make next year's harvest even better? Complaining about how this year's isn't good enough in spite of all our hard labor? Or celebrating the harvest in gratitude and working together to make sure that everyone has enough? This is all good and well, and as it should be, for a traditional harvest festival in a largely agrarian society, but it doesn't make as much sense in our modern suburban lives where most of us are not involved in growing our own food. We still depend on the harvest, of course, and on the people who do the harvesting, so we should remember that and be grateful as the summer turns into the fall. But even the timing of the harvest is only correct locally. Produce that used to be available only seasonally, like strawberries, is now in supermarkets all year round. So even the idea of harvest time has been smeared across the calendar. However, there is one part of the celebration of the harvest that continues to make sense, namely sharing what we have out of the mindset of abundance. For all that our supermarkets stock an incredible array of produce and other goods, not only what is grown or made locally, but also foods from hundreds, even thousands of miles away, for all of this apparent bounty, there are all too many people who do not have enough food to eat. As the Virginia Peninsula Food Bank explains, 1 in 10 Virginians experience the fears and pains of hunger. 1 in 10. Across the Greater Peninsula, from Surrey to Matthews, close to 48,000 people are experiencing a day or more each week without proper nutrition, including skipping meals. They are having to make difficult choices between purchasing less healthy foods, which are often cheaper, or taking care of the basic costs of living, rent, utilities, car payments, medication, and food often takes the back burner. What's more, increasing food and fuel costs have made it even more difficult for families facing hunger to get enough to eat. And since before the pandemic, the food bank has seen an increase of up to 30% in the number of people reaching out to them for assistance. This is why most harvest festivals nowadays are not about our own harvests, because other than maybe grass clippings, we don't have harvests of our own, but are instead about sharing what we have, because everyone deserves to have enough, and because we know that the more we have, the more we should share what we have. So for today's service, I invited you to bring in an item from the food bank's list of most needed items. These are canned and dry goods that are less frequently donated, but are essential when it comes to providing healthy and nutritious foods, particularly to people suffering from diabetes, high blood pressure, and other diet-related illnesses. Thank you for bringing in all of these items today, sharing from your own abundance to help our neighbors in need of good, healthy food. Our resource justice team will gratefully deliver this bounty to the food bank, so thank you for your generosity. This is how we can celebrate the harvest in our modern lives, when, as much as we depend on it, the harvest itself is only an abstraction to most of us. Instead, we embrace the mindset of abundance, sharing what we have in gratitude and knowing that it is in generosity that true abundance is to be found. I'm going to ask you some wondering questions now, and I'll give you a little time after each to reflect. Pam will put each question on the screen as I ask it. I wonder what you have experienced yourself of the growing and harvesting of your food. I wonder how you practice gratitude for the bounty of the earth, for the food that is grown and gathered, for the people who work to provide it. I wonder when you have had occasion to help others and when you have needed help from others. I wonder what you can do to help build a longer table. For our activity today, we have a responsive reading by Percival Chubb, who joined the British Ethical Society in his 20s and served as president of the American Ethical Union in his 70s. Pam will put the words on the screen, and I'll read the words in Roman type if you'll all respond with the words in italic type. This is called a harvest of gratitude. Once more, the fields have ripened to harvest, and the fruitful earth has fulfilled the promises of spring.
The work of those who labor has been rewarded. They have sown and reaped, planted and gathered.
How rich and beautiful is the bounty gathered, the golden grain and clustered corn, the grapes of purple and green.
The crimson apples and yellow pears, and all the colors of orchard and garden, vineyard and field.
Season follows after season, after winter the spring, after summer the harvest-laden autumn.
From bud to blossom, from flower to fruit, from seed to bud again, the beauty of the earth unfolds.
From the harvest of the soil, we are given occasion to garner a harvest of the heart and mind.
A harvest of resolve to be careful stewards of all life's gifts and opportunities.
A harvest of reverence for the wondrous power of life at work in things that grow and in the soul.
A harvest of gratitude for every good which we enjoy, and a fellowship for all who are sustained by diversity.
In the words of the responsive reading by Percival Chubb, the harvest of the soil, of the food that nourishes us and lifts our spirits, leads to other forms of harvest in our hearts and minds. First, Chubb names a harvest of resolve, to be careful stewards of all life's gifts and opportunities. Now, stewardship doesn't mean hoarding what we have, keeping it to ourselves and generally acting out of the mindset of scarcity. Rather, stewardship means using life's goods and opportunities wisely, applying them for the greater good, and generally acting out of the mindset of abundance. Second, Chubb names a harvest of reverence for the wondrous power and life at work in things that grow and in the soul. This means that we don't take anything or anyone for granted. Rather, we respect those on whom we depend for our food and other goods, for our own growth in body, mind, and spirit, and we honor and care for the earth that supports and sustains us all. Third, Chubb names a harvest of gratitude for every good which we enjoy and of fellowship for all who are sustained by earth's beauty. For many UUs and others, gratitude is the first and most important religious response to life's gifts. It's about recognizing that we did nothing to deserve, much less to earn, the blessings of the seasons, of darkness and light, of air and water and food, of friendship. And thus, in thankfulness, we are called to share those blessings with one another, with friend and neighbor and stranger alike. Now, I do think Chubb has these harvests backwards. Gratitude is the first response, a simple thank you for all that we have and enjoy. Then follows reverence, wonder at all that has made it possible for us to have anything for which to be grateful. And from gratitude and reverence come resolve that our blessings call us to bless others, to respect one another and the earth, and to make sure that everyone has enough. In our own lives, in this season of the harvest of the soil, may we experience the harvests of gratitude, reverence, and resolve, celebrating our place within the interdependent web of all existence and measuring our success by how well we work together to serve the whole, because there is enough for us all. May it be so.